Welcome everyone. Today, regarding today's AMA session with our research partnership with Comdex. Wherever you're watching from, a very good morning, afternoon, or evening. Before we get going, let me give you a brief overview of what Comdex is and aims to achieve. Comdex is a decentralized financial infrastructure layer for the interchain, built to provide a foundation for the development of DeFi, development and deployment of DeFi in Cosmos. The Comdex chain comprises several on-chain modules designed to mimic the prevalent primitives of finance and DeFi to enable the creation of any DeFi application with a faster go-to-market. I'm Leon, and I'll be your host for today. I'm a community moderator at BAM Protocol, and I have been for the past 2 years. Happy to have everyone tuning in here today to discuss the formal partnership between Comdex and BAM Protocol. Today we have Sid with us, who's the co-founder and CEO of Comdex. Thank you for joining, man. Very warm welcome.
Thanks, Leon. Thanks for having me here.
Sure. Before we do a deeper dive into our partnership, could you briefly introduce yourself for everyone?
Sure. I'm Siddharth. I'm one of the co-founders of Comdex. Started building Comdex in 2018, prior to which I have a background in traditional finance. I've worked in investment banking and wealth management. Got very interested in the space, in the crypto space in 2017. And started doing a lot of research, started trying to learn what it's all about, and then realized that there's tremendous potential in the technology in terms of what it can do, to disrupt the traditional finance space and bring more value to users who interact with finance in general. So we started our journey building Comdex in 2018. Focused on solutions that were more institution and enterprise oriented, where we created a platform for commodities traders to digitize their commodities and tokenize them, and then trade them within themselves. Over time, we realized that for this product to truly achieve what it's designed to achieve and provide the value that is designed to provide is ultimately to build infrastructure that can facilitate many more complementing services as well. So things like payments, things like financing, which actually drive a lot of the traditional finance activity. So we wanted to build that infrastructure layer first, which can facilitate these solutions to be built on top, which work in a complementing kind of ecosystem with each other to deliver value ultimately to the global supply chain. So from then we kind of recognize the opportunity to create a DeFi focused infrastructure which can ultimately deliver that, and that's what we're building now with Comdex.
Sounds very amazing. Thank you for the introduction. Because you said that Comdex has different modules, could you perhaps chime in on that? Give a more elaborate explanation on those, because that sounds really, really interesting.
For sure. So, when you look at just how finance operates, whether it's traditional finance or DeFi, it's largely comprising of several different financial instruments that we interact with. And a lot of the times when you break down each financial instrument to its individual components, it's just multiple components of different transaction structures that are kind of stuck together to create a new financial instrument. So when you break it down in that fashion, you realize that it's all kind of like a Legos that can be constructed by combining different components of the financial system to create any kind of instrument. So in our approach of building the chain as well, we realize that ultimately all of DeFi and all of finance can be reconstructed with a set of modules that we've built out, which ultimately are inspired from a lot of the primitives that prevail in traditional finance and in DeFi. So ultimately what that means is, if you had to build any kind of DeFi application, a lot of the kind of transactions that go on any kind of DeFi application can be boiled down to the 14 plus modules that we have on our chain right now. And typically you could utilize some of these modules to kind of in different combinations to kind of reconstruct them into any app. So with the apps that we have on our chain right now, we have a stablecoin app, we have a lending borrowing app, and we have a DEX. Taking the stablecoin app for an example, we're able to collateralize any crypto assets and mint the stablecoin as a debt against those assets. So the ability to collateralize an asset requires the ability to read the prices of that asset from the market, which is where Band Protocol comes in as a great example, where we're able to take price feeds of these assets through Band Protocol to be able to value that asset that sits in the collateral. And then another kind of crucial part of collateralization of any type is liquidation, where if the value of that asset starts to decline, the protocol needs to be able to liquidate that asset in order to make sure the debt remains solvent. And again, for that liquidation to occur, there needs to be a marketplace where that asset is being sold and exchanged for the asset that's borrowed against it. So truly, if you think of the stablecoin protocol, it's fundamentally made up of these individual components, and same goes for the lending borrowing platform and the DEX and anything DeFi that we can eventually think of. So the idea with the modules was that we focused on these primitives that prevail in DeFi, that
Mhm.
anyone can utilize, customize, plug and play, and then just deploy apps using that.
Super cool. Yeah, yeah. Really liking what you're doing here, especially seeing how the traditional finance is working out in comparison to what you're building. That's really cool for the upcoming yeah people, so to say. Could you chime in on how BAM protocols Oracle solution benefits Comdex trading platform? What's the catcher?
So I think oracles form a key part of any DeFi ecosystem. We've seen in the past how oracles can kind of make or break a DeFi ecosystem, right? So having a
Hmm.
strong oracle and having a strong decentralized oracle plays an important part. And since our goal as Comdex is to build a thriving DeFi ecosystem of multiple products that work in synergy, I think band protocols oracle plays an important role for us today. Where, as I mentioned, on Harbor protocol, which is the stablecoin app, anytime someone deposits a collateral, let's say it's Atom, for example, when they
Yeah.
collateralize Atom and borrow the stablecoin against it, we as a protocol, it's important for us to be able to value the collateral asset with the latest liquid price of that asset in the
Hmm.
market. And that's where the oracle comes in and plays an important role, because if the value does decline, we need to be able to swiftly liquidate that collateral to maintain the health of the protocol. Similar thing applies to our lending borrowing platform as well, which is called Komodo. Again, you can provide an asset as a collateral and borrow other assets against it as a debt. And
Hmm.
whatever asset you provide as collateral, as and when there is volatilities in the market that causes the value of that collateral to fluctuate, if it is downwards, it requires us to liquidate that collateral. And ultimately, the health of the protocol in the long run is just a function of how well the liquidations are managed or how efficient they are, and which further means that if the oracle functions and does the job that it's supposed to do, then you can be sure that liquidations will occur on time, and that's good for the health of all of DeFi
Of
in general.
the yeah, for sure. Cool, man. Sounds good. We have BAM protocol, obviously, especially with what happened over the last few years with all the wrongful liquidation and such. We have a trustworthy data source that we're really relying on. So it's good to see that we have a partnership going here. Yeah, cheers for the explanation. Let's move on here, as I probably couldn't agree more with what you've said. Um, how do you see the decentralized finance space evolving in the next years? And what role do you see Comdex playing in this evolution?
DeFi as a whole is, I think, at a very interesting point right now, because of course, if you look at the macroeconomic conditions of crypto markets, especially, many people might say we're in what you call a bear market right now. So
Mhm.
liquidity is definitely crunched at the moment. But it's also, I think, a time where over the past year, all the events that we've kind of witnessed, we have things like the Terra Luna collapse, you have things like the FTX and Celsius collapse. It's kind of been an educative journey for all of us who have kind of witnessed all of these incidents. Uh, what we learned from FTX, Celsius, and Voyager is that when you rely on centralized financial systems, you tend to expose yourself to a lot of vulnerabilities, and those vulnerabilities, when they are exploited, can have a huge rippling impact on everyone who's involved. Which is what DeFi was designed to solve. It's ultimately creating more transparent financial systems and creating uh, ability for anyone to participate in these systems, without kind of having the risk of having individuals with a disproportionate power to kind of exploit the system. So I think one big movement that I can see happening in the foreseeable future is that people are becoming more and more aware and educated about what they're interacting with as DeFi users, and trying to ask more relevant questions about, what's the yield, where is it coming from, is the yield sustainable, is it something that I can do for many years and continue earning. So I think that's
Yeah.
a very positive momentum and movement towards DeFi. Another, I think, big thing that really excites me about DeFi right now is that we've seen a lot of good, high quality liquid staking protocols emerge in the Cosmos ecosystem, uh, which is going to be very healthy for DeFi as a whole, because again, it kind of takes away that decision making from the user of having to choose between staking your asset for a staking yield or deploying it in DeFi for whatever DeFi yields you can have. With liquid staking, you can kind of do both. And with what we're doing at Comdex, we kind of want to be ahead of the curve. We want to integrate liquid staking to the extent possible within the DeFi products we have built out. We're also working on our own solution to have LP tokens or LP shares of the liquidity you provide on dexes to be used as collateral in our stablecoin, and ultimately in lending borrowing use cases as well. So the idea here is to create now more and more avenues for yield bearing DeFi assets to be used as collateral to kind of create a more rippling effect for users to be able to participate in DeFi, and actually just open up more and more, I would say, opportunities for aware users who understand what they're doing to actually lever up in the DeFi space. So these are, I'd say, a couple of things that I think would be great to see unfold over the coming near future.
Yeah, bright future ahead of us, from what I can hear. Even though we're in a bear market, I think the crypto got introduced because it's decentralized. That's the whole thing of crypto. So seeing like all the issues and liquidation with CeFi platforms or centralized platform last year was a really unfortunate case of events, especially for me personally. Uh, DeFi is the way to go. That's why crypto got introduced in general. So seeing a platform as Comdex evolve as a good decentralized finance infrastructure is really good to see. Could I probably essentially say that Comdex is a bridge between DeFi and CeFi? How do you see that yourself?
Yes, so I would say the long-term vision for Comdex is to, by building out this infrastructure layer, is to effectively serve as a bridge between these two ecosystems. Why I say that is also because as CeFi ecosystems evolve, as crypto evolves as well, we're
Mhm.
already seeing a lot of, big countries take the leap towards kind of opening up and creating more friendlier regulations towards crypto and towards DeFi itself. And I think the end game of everything that we do in this space is to ultimately, attract institutional adoption towards the technology that we have built out. And for that to happen, there needs to be robust infrastructure that these institutions can rely on when they ultimately take to adopting something like DeFi, or at least take to adopting the technology of decentralization. So
Yep.
the role we want to play is serve that infrastructure layer, which is able to create any kind of finance application on it, and then also demonstrate with the existing applications that this is indeed a robust technological infrastructure that we've created. And ultimately, when regulations become more friendly, when macroeconomic conditions become more friendly, and when enterprises and institutions start taking towards decentralized technology, we ideally want to be positioned as the kind of prime candidates for them to adopt to, because we have this infrastructure in place.
Yeah, I can imagine. Because chiming in on that, do you have any automated market makers on your platform, or how can developers or users get involved with Comdex? What resources are essentially available for them to be on your platform?
So, presently we have three apps that are live on the chain, which I mentioned earlier on. For
Mhm.
developers to get involved, all of our code is open source, and we always encourage folks to, check out our GitHub, get involved with all of the things that are going on. We have a very active forum page called forum.comdex.one, where you can always participate in any of the discussions that are happening there. With the CMDX token itself, which is the layer one token for the Comdex chain, we have 12.5% of the token economics allocated towards a community dev fund, which is ultimately to incentivize folks who want to build on the Comdex chain, whether it's in the form of complementing solutions or just individual dApps that are on top of the Comdex chain, which will ultimately drive value to the chain.
Yeah.
So anyone who wants to get involved, I think the best way to do that is just open up a discussion on the forum. We have a very active community there that gets involved in these discussions, and from there I think it should be pretty straightforward for anyone to kind of navigate their way into getting more deeper involvement with the team and with the building on Comdex.
Cool. Good to know. Cheers. Could you perhaps tell us more about the 2023 roadmap for Comdex? What's there to look out for everyone tuning in?
Yeah, for sure. A big part of our roadmap this year, because we launched our products very recently, The big focus will be to, on a consistent basis or on an ongoing basis, improve the user experience across all of these products. So we have very close monitoring of the feedback that the community is providing us, to integrate as much of it as possible into the application. So on a consistent basis, we'll have a lot of improvements and upgrades going out on the applications that we have built out. We'll also be looking to expand each application in terms of, the assets that one can use on these applications. So our Dex has new liquidity pools that go live almost on a weekly basis. On the stablecoin protocol, we have new collateral assets that we keep adding on a weekly basis as well. The lending borrowing platform will very soon start having liquidity pools or lending pools for a larger set of assets. Currently, there's just one, but we'll soon be expanding with more, and then enabling incentives. So within the existing product set, this is kind of the focus. But beyond that, in 2023, there'll be a lot of chain level improvements happening as well, where we'll see a few more modules that get added to the chain, which enable creation of more complex DeFi applications as well. We have spoken about having a futures perpetuals modules built, modules that enable creation of futures and perpetuals platforms built into the chain, which ultimately will then result in an application as well. So these are kind of the major exciting things that we have lined up for this year. Of course, as I said earlier on, we're also working on a technology or a methodology to integrate the LP tokens or the LP shares from our DEX as a collateral as well. So yeah, expect to see a lot of these very soon. And on a, I would say, as a kind of broader roadmap as well, the product set will also grow. We'll have products built out on synthetics, on futures,
Of
on
course,
perpetuals.
yeah,
So that's kind of the,
understandable.
yeah.
Cool. A lot of things to look out for. Sounds really good, man. And since you're a decentralized platform, could you perhaps chime more in on the fees? Because I personally know that's also a bit of a hassle when using any DeFi protocols. How are the fees mentioned on your platform? Are they fixed or are they variable rates? Yeah.
Yeah, so the fees, talking about the Bitcoin protocol, largely the fees that we collect are in the form of interest, which is stability fees. There's also liquidation penalties, and then there's also drawdown fees. But the stability fee kind of is the primary fee that the protocol, operates on. Again, this is a variable fee because if you think about it, it's kind of like a monetary policy for that protocol as a whole. So during
Mhm.
expansionary phases, the fee would be lower, but during contractionary phases, the fee would be higher. But it's also meant to serve as a long-term pegging mechanism for the stablecoin as well, because lower fees encourage more minting, whereas higher fees discourage minting, which is ultimately creating kind of controls on the supply. So this is all managed by governance. So anyone who holds the governance token Harbor can get involved in the governance process, which ultimately monitors these fees and parameters. On the lending borrowing platform, it's a dynamic interest rate again, which is ultimately a function of utilization. So the more people borrow from the pool, the higher the interest rate gets, and beyond a certain kind of utilization rate, the rate at which the interest grows is much higher as well. So again, it's a function of how you utilize the app as well. There, I think the governance that can be performed is more in terms of getting new assets onboarded and setting the debt limits for them as well. On the DEX, the fees are in the swap fees, which ultimately go to the LPs of the DEX.
Yeah. Cool. Lovely that the parameters are decided by a governance protocol. That's really cool. Um, moving on. Yeah, how do you address the issue of liquidity fragmentation of decentralized exchanges momentarily? Particularly as more DEX emerge and compete for users and liquidity.
I think this is a very valid concern, across the ecosystem. Of course, there's having a lot of DEXs is good in some ways because it gives users the option to have different products to interact with and make the decision themselves for what the best product for them is.
Yeah.
But the negative side effect of that is the fragmentation of liquidity. But within that is again an opportunity for products to be built that are focused on kind of unifying that liquidity or creating kind of like a aggregation of all of that liquidity. The great thing is with our infrastructure that we have in place, the Comdex chain, anyone who has such a concept or such a product in mind that they believe can truly solve this liquidity fragmentation problem, it would be very simple for them to utilize the modules that we have in the Comdex chain and build this product out and then have a much faster go to market as opposed to launching their own app chain. Because when you launch your app chain, you have to figure out the validators, you have to create an incentive system to onboard the validators. there's a lot
Yeah,
to there's a lot that goes into the tokenomics thought as well. What we want to do is
yeah,
kind of make that go to market easy. So if someone was to come up with a solution that truly optimizes this problem, then with the modules that we have on our chain, makes it an ideal place to build that out.
yeah. I couldn't agree more. Comdex in that way is like a plug and play, where a lot of tech is already built for you, so you don't have to develop it yourself. And if you have an idea that is helping to solve this problem, I think Comdex is the way to go there. As you already mentioned earlier, you have your own token, CMDX. Could you probably give a more broader overview on this particular token for everyone? How is it
Yep.
used? What is it used for?
So CMDX is the kind of native token of the Comdex chain. Its primary function is, you can firstly stake it and participate in the governance. Presently, governance is used for, onboarding new assets and liquidity pools on the DEX as well. On the on the lending borrowing side as well, CMDX can be lent out in its own individual CMDX pool that we have there. For setting the parameters on the lending borrowing platform, CMDX stakers can participate in the governance and help in the modification of these parameters as well. It serves as the kind of gas token and transaction fee token as well throughout the chain. So all the transactions that happen on the chain collect gas in CMDX. Additionally, CMDX will be utilized as collateral as well. Currently, you can utilize CMDX as collateral on Komodo and then borrow, assets against it from whether it's Atom or CMST, which is in the same pool. In the future, when we launch more pools, you can have cross-pool borrowing lending with the CMDX token as well. And then all the protocol revenue that's earned by Komodo presently accrues value to CMDX, because beyond a certain threshold, when the revenue is earned by the protocol, it will all go back to CMDX from the interest that it earns from borrowers.
Yeah, gotcha. Cool. Cheers, man. Another question, could you discuss any plans or consideration for Comdex to expand its offering to other financial instruments? Top of mind here is probably tokenization for insurance or real estate. I see a lot is possible with your platform, so just wanted to get your thought on that.
Um, I think commodities is kind of the first place that
Oh
we'd go
yeah,
to in
yeah.
the TradFi side, because we have
Mm-hmm.
already the infrastructure to tokenize them. What we were lacking was an infrastructure to have these tokenized commodities, with payments and with financing integrated into them. Now that we have that infrastructure in place, the kind of onus is on us to prove that this infrastructure is robust enough for institutional players to adopt it. So our focus will be to prove that robustness through the applications that we have built out and kind of build liquidity there. Once we reach our liquidity milestones and goals, we're much better positioned to go back to the institutional side of things and try to draw that institutional liquidity into the systems we have built out. So
Mm-hmm.
commodities would probably be a great place to start, because that's one of those industries that I truly believe could highly benefit from decentralization as a whole, from blockchain and from transparency, and that's kind of where we want to be in the long run.
Imagine. I couldn't agree more, actually. Yeah, perhaps moving back on the partnership between BAN and Comdex, could you tell everyone what we can expect in the future of this partnership? Moving forward. You touched on commodities. We can essentially help in there regarding data prices.
For sure. I mean, with the existing apps that we have, as I mentioned, one of our focuses is to keep adding new and new assets into this application from across the interchain. I think Band will have an important role to play there, because every time a new asset gets added, when we think of it as a collateral on any of the platforms, we need to be able to have a consistent access to a decentralized price feed or a price oracle
Yeah.
for that. And that will be kind of one of the biggest avenues I can see where Band will be of tremendous value in the things that we have building out for us in the future. In
Mhm.
addition to that, when more and more builders kind of come into the Comdex ecosystem and start building their own products, whether it's something like a futures, perpetuals, etc., and they start bringing more and more assets from across the interchain into the ecosystem, again, I think Band will have a role to play there, because all these assets need to be priced for the system to know what to do with them, and that's where I think the Oracle plays a big role.
Yeah, for sure. Moving on. For regarding transaction speed, could you perhaps tell how Comdex approaches this issue, especially with especially for confirmation times. What measures do you have in place to ensure fast and reliable trades on the Comdex platform?
So one of the things that helps the way things that are designed on the Comdex chain right now, one of the things that helps about it is that when you have let's say something like a liquidation happening for a particular collateral asset, a lot of times in volatile market conditions, liquidations tend to cascade where the asset is consistently losing value and more of it, more and more of it keeps getting liquidated. We wanted to be able to help users achieve that liquidation much faster so that they don't lose out on the ability to kind of arbitrage from that liquidation. So having the DEX and let's say something like a Harbor protocol be on the same chain helps solve that in terms of a UX standpoint, because when a user participates in a liquidation on Harbor protocol, ultimately it's an opportunity for them to buy that asset at a discount from that auction. But to truly realize the arbitrage, they need to quickly be able to move that asset over to the DEX and swap it out at the prevailing market price to realize that arbitrage. So because it's all on the same chain, all our applications are highly composable within themselves. So users' experience of having to kind of do all of this can be achieved, in a much more single-click fashion where there's more atomicity in the way these transactions are structured. And then ultimately that will create for more efficient liquidations, whether it's on the lending borrowing side or on the Harbor protocol side. So one of our key focuses has been to kind of create more and more composability within these apps. And we'll be enabling this one-clickness more by kind of building out more feature upgrades into our apps, where if a user wants to participate in an auction and also realize the arbitrage, they could do that, in a single click and only approve a transaction once rather than having to do multiple transaction signatures.
Super cool. UX or low, a good UX like the low-hanging fruit here, especially for new users onboarding. You need good UX system to make it composable for everyone. So it's good to see that you have that going on Comdex. Finally, as a last question, what is the long-term vision for Comdex, and how do you see the platform contributing to the broader adoption of decentralized technologies?
As I said, I think the long-term focus is to create a infrastructure that's proven itself to be transparent, efficient, and robust, so that we are able to inspire the confidence from institutions. And I would say this is not just a vision for Comdex, but I think it's a broader vision for the ecosystem, Web3 ecosystem as a whole.
I agree.
To inspire adoption from institutions, to bring that volume, to bring that capital into our ecosystems. And in order to do that, it is to kind of truly focus on on the tech itself and prove that it's truly robust and delivers what it's designed to. So that's our focus as well. In terms of what we've done on the commodities side, there's a lot that's left to be done still. I've always mentioned the kind of payments and financing to be the biggest pieces of that industry that need disruption and solving. So our long-term focus will be to actually tap into exactly that, to create a financing infrastructure for institutions, to create a payments infrastructure for institutions, relying on the infrastructure that we already have built out.
Cool. Cheers. I think with that we discussed most of the things regarding BAM protocol and Comdex. Is there anything you wanted to touch on that I missed out on?
No, I think it was a very comprehensive discussion, and really thank you for having me here. I'm hoping to have more and more kind of fruitful interactions and synergies between BAM protocol and Comdex as we go forward.
Yeah, surely. With that, I'm going to close out. Thank you for being here and for your time, and I wish you a lovely rest of your day.
Thanks, Leon. Thanks for having me here.
All right, cheers.